What's up, guys? Welcome to the Line Change, and we're going to have a very special guest on the podcast today. We're going to have Dave Hall, but before I bring him in, I want to give a quick shout out to my sponsor, Gassy Jack Art, maker of that incredible artwork you see there behind me. So go ahead and check him out at GassyJackArt.com. So without any further ado, let's bring him on. We got Dave Hall from Canucks Army joining the podcast. Thanks for joining me, Dave.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So let's start off. I ask everyone who I bring on the podcast. You've probably heard this a dozen times now. What's your favorite hockey team?
Unfortunately, at a young age, I blessed myself with the curse of being a Canucks fan. So I've been a Canucks fan since I was about 4 years old, and that's just where we stand.
Yeah. I believe Russell asked you that same question, so I felt as though I already knew the answer. I'm actually a good friend of Russell. So
Okay, yep.
Yeah. How did you get started at Canucks Army?
Actually, it was funny. I've been writing for quite a little bit here, and I was managing editor over at Dauber Hockey, and I was full on Canucks at that point, and so I was actually in at the Victoria training camp, and I had ran into some of the guys there, and then out of the blue, I just had someone reach out, and it turns out to be Quadrelli, and he reached out one day and just asked if I wanted to be a part of the team to cover prospects, and I knew that was Chris Faber's realm, and so it was kind of weird to me considering Faber was running the thing, and so Faber kind of took me under his wing, showed me how things work at Canucks Army, and then I later found out about 2 months in that Faber was leaving, and I was taking over for Faber. So once I got that news, it was, it was big shoes to fill. But yeah, so it was kind of honestly just on a whim. I guess Faber had followed my work for a bit, and we just connected, and I ended up. The rest is history, as they say.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite non-Canuck player?
Yeah, I mean, when I grew up, I feel like even though I'm a Canucks fan, I feel like even when you're a Canucks fan, it was hard to hate the Colorado Avalanche, even though every fiber of you wanted to hate the Colorado Avalanche. It was hard to hate guys like Sakic and Peter Forsberg, but I always just had a real soft spot for Peter Forsberg. Just the way that he worked his game, it just I feel like he was the original skilled power forward. I know there was a bunch out there, but there's just something about his game where he was a top 5 talent in the league, but he also just threw those reversed hits and was just super hard to play against. So I think Peter Forsberg was always kind of my go-to guy. I also always had a bit of I always really liked Shea Weber. I by no means a defenseman, but for whatever reason I loved the way that Shea Weber would play. Just a massive brutal guy from the back end, but also just had that clapper. And I'll never forget the time that he slap shot the puck through the net with Team Canada that one time. And yeah, it was just I always just liked Shea Weber.
All right, let's do that as a segue. Do you have a favorite past Canuck?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's always a bit of a cop-out, but growing up, I was always just a big Marcus Naslund guy. He was around from my, my heyday of being a fan, from being like 12 to 17. It was Marcus Naslund. He was just always there. He was just such a great guy off the ice. And I don't know, I at a young age, or not even a young age, I guess 12, I got his jersey, and he was just always my go-to guy. Like I said, it's a bit of a cop-out, but Marcus Naslund was always my guy.
All right, favorite current Canuck?
Favorite current Canuck? That's a good question. Can I say DPD, Elias Pettersson? I'm gonna go with him. I know he's kind of on the cusp, but he's gonna make the team out of camp in my opinion. So I think right now he's honestly my favorite. I've loved him as a prospect from day one, and now he's just the one thing I love about him is he's looked the same every single rank that he goes through, and this is just what you're getting with DPD. And so I love the kid. He's just a brute. Speaking of Shea Weber, right? Like obviously not Shea Weber, but just the way that he plays, just that rugged style. I just love it.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite Canucks moment?
Ooh, favorite Canucks moment. I mean, again, I guess a bit of a cop-out, but, anything from that 2011 Cup run, for me, I'm 35 now, so for me, I'm in my early 20s, nothing really in life mattered other than every second night watching a Canucks game, hanging out with my buddies, and everything from that stretch is just, some of the best memories I have, just, watching it on a consistent basis. Obviously there's slaying the dragon, just basically everything. But I also, being a Marcus Nausen guy, I'll never forget the one moment where he's coming up the wing. They're down to Calgary with seconds left, and he cuts towards the middle, and then Matt Cook delivers that the empty net there to tie it up with seconds left, and he ended up doing that in back-to-back years. But I know that moment always stuck out to me as, a pretty wow moment for me. So.
Were you downtown at all during the 2011 Cup run?
So I went. I'm on the island, so I live on Vancouver Island. So that day of Game 7, me and my buddies were like, well, you know what? We have to go over just to, if they win, this is, who knows if they'll ever do this again. We have to be a part of the festivities. So unfortunately, I was downtown for the whole spectacle. Tried to make my way out. I remember having to. The entire time, I'm just trying to get out of that whole mayhem. I didn't want to be a part of it. And I'll never forget getting tear gassed and then having to go retreat into the bowling alley on Granville just to get away from the tear gas. But yeah, unfortunately, I was there for just that one day and ended up being a pretty bad night for not only myself, but the entire city. But
yeah, I was there briefly. I think I left after maybe the first or second period. I was like, oh, it's it's done. There's no point being here. I'm on the North Shore, so I ended up taking the sea bus over. Once I got over to the North Shore, I turned around, and that's when I saw the smoke.
Yeah,
and I was like, what's going on? Like, did they score or tie it? And then obviously I find out where I was standing was where that car got flipped over and set on fire.
Oh yeah,
literally like 20 minutes earlier. And I was like, hey, I was standing right there. I'm glad I left when I did.
Absolutely. It was, it was just, it was one of those things where I remember after it happened, like, there was a while that I actually admitted that I actually was over there just because, you didn't want to be associated to the whole event. Right. So yeah, we went over just we were hoping that we were going to celebrate a Vancouver Canucks Stanley Cup win, but obviously we got caught in the crossfire.
Yeah, for sure. But it's still having, those big screens up. And that's what sucks about that situation is we'll probably never see that again. Because of what happened. Everyone. Yeah. And I still remember, what was it? Game 5 in the Western Conference final against the Sharks. I remember being around that area by where like CBC is, just by the arena. And I believe there was a little McDonald's around the corner by the library. I don't know if it's still there. But just watching the game in the library, and that McDonald's was packed with people just watching. And I remember the Bieksa goal just looking away for a split second and then them celebrating. And I'm like, what happened? And then obviously I saw the replay and I was like, wow. And then, my buddy and I, we just ran out of the McDonald's. He actually, I think, took his shirt off and was just high-fiving people. So crazy. that was great. Definitely a memory for me.
Well, the good thing is you didn't miss it. Sorry to interrupt. You didn't miss anything because no one knew what was going on. No one saw that goal go in. So
yeah, I watched the replay of that over and over again, and it still blows my mind.
Yeah. Wow.
If you could change anything in Canucks history, what would it be?
Oh, geez. Oh, that's a good question. I mean, can I say that they didn't get shut out in Game 7 and lose the Stanley Cup final? I mean, I don't know. I just feel like that was, obviously that was their big. They had 94 as well, but to get dominated that badly on home ice in Game 7, it's just what's happening here, right? And so, I guess it would have to just be that they showed up and it wasn't, again, I guess a cop-out answer, but it's just, that just seemed to be their moment right then and there. And it wasn't even that they just lost. They got manhandled and lost in, pretty untheoretic, just terrible time.
Yeah. Yeah, trust me, that's a lot of people's answer is the 2011 Cup final. I believe that was even Quads' answer as well.
Yeah, it sucks. It's a bit of a cop-out. I hate cop-out. Yeah. I wish I could give a better answer, but it's like that has to be it, right?
Well, that has to be like the first thing that pops into your head.
Exactly.
Obviously. Do you have a favorite Canucks line?
Oh, West Coast Express, absolutely. That's that whole time. Again, that was, me. How old was I? 15. I don't know. Just that that's just high school for me, right? West Coast Express, everything, every second night. Listening to Jim Houston, the West Coast Express being out there. It's just that whole time, Jovanovski and Nolan on the back end. It was just fantastic memories. So the West Coast Express, no questions asked.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's still my favorite line to this day. That was really in my heyday when I was watching the Canucks. Morrison, Naslin, Bertuzzi.
Yeah.
Good
Trent
old
Klatt.
days. Oh yeah, I remember Trent Klatt. Yeah, yeah. I remember a lot of the goalies from the past. Obviously, this new generation probably haven't really heard of these names. I actually did a video on past goalies for the Canucks, guys like Bob Essensa.
Yes.
Yeah, Felix Potvin, Gar Snow,
Archer Urbe.
Yeah. Actually, Artur Silovs kind of reminded me of Artur Zerbe.
Yeah, absolutely. Bob Essensa was the best. It was so funny. You're a Canucks fan because that's who when I was playing goal at street hockey, I was Bob Essensa of all people. So that's how you're a diehard Canucks fan.
Mm-hmm. Let's shift over a little bit towards Abbotsford because I know you did a lot of coverage on Abbotsford. And on that note, your articles, The Farmies, really helped me out when I was doing my recaps. Obviously, I do not have Flow Hockey, so I was not actually able to physically watch the game. Yeah, and Russell did help me out a little bit, but at the same time, it's I gotta make notes and screw that. I'll just wait for Dave to post his Farmies, and then I can do my recap. So I wanted to thank you for that. They were very well done, very detailed, and I loved your structure of it too. You had the shots each period, which was very helpful. So once again, thank you very much for that.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Definitely gave me content during, with the Canucks being out of the playoffs, I had to do something. Yeah. And I've actually only been doing this for about 6 months. So I needed some form of content. And it also led to me paying more attention to Abbotsford, of course, and, learning more about the players. I also had Brandon Astle on the show last week. So he gave me a lot more insight about the players. Yeah. And it's really got me interested and excited for next season for Abby. But talking about Abbotsford, what was it like, the Calder Cup run? What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, pretty much what you just said is a big reason why this was such a good thing, right? After such a terrible season, Vancouver-wise, so much drama, just, obviously they didn't make the playoffs and just so much negativity around the market. It was just such a nice bounce back story for the organization as a whole, just to come in and give the province of BC this magical run. I feel like it really captured audiences such as yourself who, otherwise wouldn't have probably watched, who just... Abbotsford's there. It's great. Yeah, they got some of Canucks' prospects, but I think this really opened up to just what it can be. And Abbotsford it's good hockey, and it helps this time around where there's actual viable prospects that are playing within the team. There's a long time. There's been a while where whether it's Utica or even the early days of Abbotsford, where there's a couple guys, couple tweeners, but there was no one really intriguing that you were really hoping to make the jump. But now we've got a list of maybe 7 guys that could potentially make the team, if not just be a call-up option mid-season. So for me, it was fantastic. On a personal level, it was just, it was really good to, because I've been following the team on a Wednesday in December, right? And so, for someone like me who's been following the team every single game, all 72 regular season games, it was nice to, be able to showcase myself throughout, I was doing game breakdowns in June 24th, right? I did not anticipate that. So on a personal level, it was just a lot of fun just to see this team that I've followed so closely and, talk to a lot of the players. And, it was just a good moment for everyone across the board. And so it was just nice to see. And I just feel like it's really good for the brand going forward where, there's going to be a lot more eyes on them, hopefully next year, hopefully they can kind of carry this momentum and, go on a deep run next year too.
Obviously, some players left the team. Guys like Sammy Blais, Phil Di Giuseppe. What are your reactions to them leaving after the Calder Cup run?
Yeah, I mean, it sucks. Obviously, they had a pretty good thing going. A lot of good veterans. I'm to be honest, none of the moves so far have surprised me. You got guys like Christian Rolanen who. he's been a great. Obviously, he's their leading assist getter of the franchise. He's a quarterback of their top power play. He's a focal point, but it's tough with the AHL with the veteran rule and all these different rules that come into effect where it's kind of pushing out the type of hockey that Christian Verlanen plays. That 28-29 player who's kind of on the cusp, and it's just tough to carry guys like that. And so there was a lot of guys that I knew that they were going to have to leave. Like a guy like Phil DiGiuseppe, he wasn't really getting his chance in Vancouver, and a guy like that, he's not going to stick around to play in American Hockey League with no real potential to go up, right? And so you knew that if there was anyone that was going to give him a little bit of a shot to even crack an AHL lineup, he was going to go. And so obviously Winnipeg, they offer that. He might still play AHL games, but at least they can offer that kind of contract. Whereas in Vancouver, they actually have a couple players, as I already mentioned, that might, whether they take the step next year or at least on the verge. And so I just think they were really trying to go the younger route. So I haven't been too surprised. I guess the only name that I was a little bit surprised that left was Cole McWard. I've always felt that he was a pretty nice, serviceable, bottom six NHLer guy that I've always been surprised that he hasn't really been given the time. So for him to not only be not given the time, but now be gone out of the picture was a little surprising to me. But in terms of everyone else, I saw the writing on the wall. It's just how the AHL works. It's just the way that there's all these different rules with veterans and the amount of games that you can have per game at the AHL level. So eventually the rollover is just consistent. So.
On that note, thoughts on the Artur Silovs trade?
Yeah, another one. Like as much as I hate to see it, I wasn't as surprised as maybe some people were. I also wasn't surprised on the return. Artur Silovs is a fantastic goalie at the American Hockey League. Obviously, he's been doing it for a couple of years, and we've seen him win bronze at the World Championships. He went with Vancouver at the playoffs last year, and then he did what he did this year at the Calder Cup. But he's still just not proven at the NHL level, and we've seen goalies like this time and time again have good runs in the AHL and still can't crack the NHL lineup, or B, go for a 4th, 5th, 6th round pick. And so while I think it was fresh in everyone's mind, and I do think a lot of people thought that he should fetch more, that is just the market for a goaltender that still hasn't really proven himself at the NHL level. Could he? Absolutely. This could absolutely come back and haunt the Vancouver Canucks. But at the same time, when you lock up guys like Thatcher Demko and Kevin Lankinen, which pretty much gives them one of the top tandems in the game, you kind of have to ride that. And as much as it's we have to get rid of a contract in the goalie spot, it's also doing a little bit good by the player, right? Like they don't see a path for him getting NHL lineups. Here you go, buddy. Here's a bone. We're gonna trade you off, and you're gonna get your chance. So go make of it. So I do know they like guys like Ty Young and Nikita Tolopilo as well. So it was kind of just unfortunately he got the short end of the stick, but hopefully he can go like I said, push for an NHL spot in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I do think he's got a real good shot in Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
I do feel as though that trade wasn't necessarily just to get rid of a goalie. It was to help Arturs, give him a chance to grow. Obviously, I was not shocked by the trade, but I was obviously I was a big Artie fan because of last playoffs and then the Calder Cup, and just the timing of it just sucks. Considering what he did for Abby, but. I hope he does well in Pittsburgh, and I do think he's got a shot to be at least a backup, if not maybe a number one, because of Tristan Jarry. He's been up and down, and he hasn't really done well the last few years. So I think he's got a real good shot. Next question: do you have a favorite sport outside of hockey? I noticed you're wearing a Mariners hat.
Yeah, I do like baseball. I kind of just like sports in general, but I would say baseball is probably my number two. I play baseball still in a beer league, right? Like my kids play baseball. So yeah, I'd say baseball, and I grew up a Mariners fan. I grew up in the Ken Griffey days, so playing MLB '95, Ken Griffey Jr. That was kind of my heyday, and so I've just kind of stuck with the Mariners. And I can say I'm a true Mariners fan because they're one of the worst organizations in all of pro sports in North America. So I've stuck by them, and I ride with them. So I don't mind the Blue Jays. Obviously, Canada's team. I keep an eye on them, but I'm a Mariners fan through and through.
Yeah. I'm a big Blue Jays fan, but I also love the Mariners too. And like you mentioned, the Ken Griffey Jr. days.
Yeah.
Like I have, I believe, 3 Mariners jerseys, and they're all Griffey.
Yeah.
I also remember, MLB 95, and in particular, Ken Griffey Jr. Slugfest back in the
Yes.
day on the
Yes.
N64.
Hell yeah.
Really makes me wish I still had my N64. I
I
actually
still
talked
had mine
about,
as of just a couple
oh,
years ago.
nice. Yeah, I talked to Quads about that when I had him on the show. And yeah, him and I just gushed about Ken Griffey Jr. Slugfest
Oh, it was such a good
back in
game.
the day. Yeah. Um, Moving back towards the Canucks, obviously in the last couple of days, I watch a lot of Harrison Price,
Hmm.
as well as Canucks conversation, and it seems like Marco Rossi's name has come up again with speculation with the second line center. And
Sure.
do you think they still have a chance to target Marco Rossi? And what do you think his chances are of being the Canuck from 1 to 100%?
Oof. 1 to 100%, eh? I don't know. I'd probably give it like a 40, a 45. I just think, the Minnesota Wild have put him in a weird spot, right? Like they don't think very highly of him. They don't want to give him boldy numbers, but yet they also want a pretty good package for him. So they kind of got him stuck in this little purgatory right now, where it's you almost feel bad for him. Where I I'll start by prefacing that I was a massive Marco Rossi fan in his draft year. I loved Marco Rossi. I thought he was he's a great player. The problem is I just don't know if he moves the needle enough for me based on what they probably want for him. If they can get him for a decent package that doesn't include a Tom Vilander or a Jonathan Lekkerimaki, let's say, then that's great. Even a first round pick, I guess a first round pick is fine as long as it's not next year's. I just don't know if there's a realistic package that gets him here without the Canucks taking a huge gamble. I mean, we still haven't seen Marco Rossi be the kind of player that the Minnesota Wild want to trade him like he is. And so I just tread lightly with, I'm careful with what I wish for with Marco Rossi. I'd love him on the team. I just think it has to be at the right cost, and I don't think that cost is going to come at the right cost. So I'm going to put 45% only because there is still a possibility. I just don't really see it happening. Or maybe I just don't want it to. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was a big Marco Rossi. Like I was on that hype train.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's kind of subsided now because I try and be as realistic as I can be.
Yeah.
But on that note, speaking of the Canucks and trades, what was your reaction on the Dakota Joshua trade?
Yeah, I mean, okay, the one thing I think about that one is, at say what you want about this regime. The one thing that I don't do is stand still. So I try not to get, obviously I'm in the media game, so you're going to go on shows and you're going to talk about it. But I try not to I don't try not to overthink it because I see this as clearly they have something at least in the works. They're trying to get something here. I don't know what that's for. Maybe that's Rossi. Maybe that, who knows what that is. But I think this is just, their way of shedding the cap to move to something, to the next spot, which, maybe that's Chinnikov. Maybe that's Rossi. Again, I don't know. But, it does. The one thing I will say is that I don't know how good of a look it is, the fact that they keep on signing players and getting rid of them this quick, right? Like we're talking about a guy who they obviously liked. He had a good year, had some good chemistry with Connor Garland. Unfortunately, has a cancer scare, gets cancer, and then has, he's slow to come back, and he didn't have a great season. And then they trade him away the next year, right? And so one thing it doesn't do is it just doesn't provide a good, pathway for players that want to come in and, sign a ticket. Anyone's expendable at this point. And, there is something to be said about, a team just being this cutthroat and just trading away their players. So I don't know if it's the best look. I like Joshua. I think he's a good player. I don't think it's, the be all end all that he's gone. I think, Evander Kane could probably, take over some of that grit that he brought, maybe score a few more goals potentially. I mean, we're not talking about much here, but, I can see their vision with that. I just don't really know how I feel about them bringing in players, signing them long term, and then just trading them away in the year one. That's the only gripe I really have.
Yeah, definitely. And they seem to have a history of that. Andrei Kuzmenko is one name that comes to mind. Seems to be like if they have a great season and then they don't either replicate that season or at least come close to it, they shed that. I don't want to say dead weight, but they seem to shed that.
Yeah.
And I was a big Andrei Kuzmenko fan too. I actually have his jersey, and I was pretty crushed when they traded him away. Not as crushed as when they traded. Yeah, he's fantastic in LA. I did want them to go after him this offseason. And then obviously when LA signed him, I was like, there's a missed opportunity there. But obviously, losing JT Miller also crushed me. I would say him and Kuzmenko were pretty even, maybe JT a little bit more just because it's JT. But yeah, let's talk more prospects since that's really your realm. Who should the Canucks be looking at drafting next season, or is it a little too soon to be thinking about that?
Yeah, it's probably a little too soon. Obviously we're hoping Gavin McKenna. So at this point it's, trade everyone to bust, but I just don't think that's in the cards. And so right now it is a little early that, they're probably projected to, fall somewhat similar, if not a little bit better than what they did this year. So, it's a little time. I will say that they did just draft Wilson Bjork, and his brother is supposed to be a top 10 pick next year. So there is potential to grab a brother duo. But again, they'd have to be a top 10 pick likely. Although he is quite small, so he could drop a little bit. But there is one name to at least keep your eye on, and that's Vijo Bork.
All right. What are your thoughts on Braden Coots?
Oh yeah, love Braden Coots. I've been preaching about this kid for quite some time. I just, based on where I thought they were going to draft, I just think he ticks all the boxes that they need. If you look at their center depth right now, it's virtually non-existent. Past Aturatu and Ty Mueller, there just really isn't anything, and there's nothing in the cupboards further down. So you needed a center, whether it was left shot or right shot. There was a few options. There was Cole Reshny, who'd be a great pickup as well. But Coots is a right-hand shot, which is another thing they don't have a lot of. They just don't have a lot of right shot options. So those are two right off the bat. Then you got, he's not the most offensively dynamic player. I still think there's some offense to be had there. Like I'm expecting a pretty big year from him this year, but he's just a guy that just doesn't quit. He's a heart and soul type of player. He's a guy that's going to wear an A for you at some point down the road, whether that's an A or a C, if Quinn Hughes, whatever. But he's just the kind of guy you want on your team. He's a mesh guy. He doesn't quit. He's a honey badger. And so I just think there was too much of a sure thing in him to not take him. Yes, there was guys like Victor Eklund who could be a pretty good offensive player, a little bit small, but he's a bit of a dog on the bone as well. But with a guy like Braden Coots, who's just so steady two-way up the middle, I just think you had to take him at 15th overall, right? We're not talking about 5th overall. We're talking about a 15th overall pick where you just hope that he's going to play NHL games. And I think he's pretty much guaranteed to play NHL games at, whether that's a 3C or 2C even. I just think he was an easy bet in my opinion. So
on that note, do you think there's potential of him cracking the Canucks roster, maybe at least a couple games this upcoming season?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he's a right shot center definitely helps. I'm personally of the ilk of not doing that. I'd much rather them slow cook him. I'd much rather bring him into training camp. I mean, give him some preseason games for sure. Let him see what let him see what the environment's like. But I just at this point I would say just let him go enjoy his draft plus one season. Seattle's got a lot of work to do and he's the captain there, so he needs to be there. I just think let him do his thing in the first year. Maybe we revisit this in a year from now and next training camp we give him 9 games, but I just think for now just let him do his thing, let him get a preseason game or two and then go back to Seattle and work on his season, because he's still got stuff to work on. We do need to see a little bit of an offensive game, and he needs to have a strong start if he wants any shot of going to the World Juniors, because he's going to have he's going to have his work cut out for him. So I think just let him have that start and see if he can make the World Juniors, and we come back to it next year.
Thoughts on Medvedev?
Yeah, like I always said, even when he was first drafted, I kind of refer to quads. I know goalies. I follow them, but I'm by no means a goalie whisperer here. So all I know about him is that he's going to be the number one guy in London, and from everyone that I've talked to that are that know the goalie position in and out, that are they love him. They think that he's got legitimate potential to be a starting goalie at the NHL level. And so he's going to be a product. He's going to get all the games in London, which, we know what the London Knights do. They're just they just won the Memorial Cup, and they're a team that doesn't just not make a chance the second year. They consistently have a chance to win the Memorial Cup. So a guy like Medvedev is going to come in as the starting goalie this year and have a chance to go on another deep run. He could do that for a couple of years now because at this point, you don't even need to rush them into the AHL because, the way that the London Knights work, they basically are a professional team, right? They're very similar to how they run as a professional team. So I just think it's a perfect environment. When I first saw the pick, I was a little shocked that they went goalie in the second round. I didn't see it coming. There was a few names that I personally had that I thought they were going to pick, but now that I do a little more deep dive into them and the people that I've talked to, it sounds like a slam dunk in my opinion. So.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Thoughts on like guys like Willander, Mancini, making the NHL roster this upcoming season?
Yeah, I think they both have a shot. I do think the Canucks will likely give Willander every opportunity to make the team. I just think they think of him as the future defenseman, right? And so I think they are going to try to give him as much. It's basically going to be up to him. Is he ready or not? We'll see through the preseason and through the first couple games. I do think he makes the team out of camp. Again, just to kind of give him a game or two, or 9 or whatever they want to do to see if he sinks or swims. That said, I do think he does spend some time in Abbotsford after he gets those games. I just don't see any need to rush him really. I as you can see, I said this to Bring Coots too. I'm very much don't rush these kids. I'm very much in the slow marinate camp. Like let him go to Abbotsford, let him enjoy it, let him soak up the time, let him be that number one guy. It's the same with Lekarimaki last year, right? Just like let him slide in, let him be that number one guy, let him gain that confidence, and see where we go from there. Unless he comes into training camp and just knocks the socks off. But, it helps that you got a guy like Victor Mancini as well, because I do think Victor Mancini is ready to make that jump, whether that's, right off the bat or not. I think he can slot in as the third defenseman on that right side. So I like everything that we saw in the Calder Cup from him is, he's ready to at least try, push for a spot out of training camp. He's a fantastic skater. He plays an incredibly mean game in the corners. And I just, he's got as much as a shot as anyone. I do just think because Willander is kind of their golden goose, I do think they're going to give him every shot to make it.
Absolutely. And, I spoke about how, I was devastated about the JT Miller trade. That brought us Victor Mancini. So yep. I'm a little less sour on it, especially after the way he played for Abbotsford in the Calder Cup.
Yeah, it turns out he was more than just a throw-in, right? Like they obviously had him specifically pegged as a player they wanted back, which was apparently the holdup, right? Like the Rangers didn't want to give him up, and there's obviously a reason. So.
Yeah, and we all heard Braden Schneider's name as well around that as well. Yep. So they weren't sure if it was Schneider or Mancini. Let's see if I have anything else here. Do you think the Canucks will make any more moves between now and training camp?
Yeah, I do. Like I said, that's why I didn't really jump on the Joshua trade, because I do think it's a step towards something. What that something is, I don't know. I'm kind of hoping maybe it's Yegor Chinakhov. Maybe that's it. I don't know what it will be, but the one thing that I've learned about this management is they strike when you least expect it, and they're just constantly revisiting. They're never standing still, which is, maybe that's a good, maybe that's a bad thing, as we already talked about. We don't like the fact that they're just, pushing guys out after one bad season, but at the same time, they're not going to stay stagnant. So I still do think they make a trade. They still need some goal scoring up in the top 6, somewhere. And so they still need a 2C. I don't know where it comes from, but they do need to make at least one, if not two deals before training camp. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. I guess this was a while back now, but thoughts on the Brock Besser extension and just that whole I don't want to say debacle, but it feels like it was a bit of a
It was a
debacle,
debacle.
starting all the way from, what was it, January, and then Alvin's comments. We won't get into those comments because that still grinds my gears, those comments. But that it feels like it kind of all came full circle with him resigning. Your initial reaction to him resigning in the 11th hour on July 1st?
Yeah, I mean, I think just as much as everyone, I was shocked. I think we had all been prepped to just, he was going to Minnesota. He was going wherever he was going. It was not going to be a Canucks uniform. And so I think the fact that it happened out of nowhere definitely was a shock. And yeah, I didn't like it either. Like just like we had just talked about, I keep on going rants on about that, this whole cutthroat, just pushing guys out. I don't personally like how they treated the whole situation. It's Brock Besser, right? It's fine. He is a player that, there is something to be said that you do need to run a business and run an organization. But at the same time, there is a way to do business, and that's just not how I would personally run things. Especially with a guy like Brock Besser, a bit of a heart and soul kind of guy. We've watched this guy grow up. He's been through so much since he's been a Canuck. And so the fact that they were just being a little bit cutthroat was a little upsetting. And then, of course, yeah, the fact that it got done, it's just, and thank goodness too, it was starting to get a little nerve wracking. They still need work to do, but when you were looking at who was available on that July 1st, if you lose Brock Besser, say what you want about him, but where is your goals coming from next year if he doesn't come back? So at the end of the day, I think it was essential. They got a pretty good deal for him, in my opinion. So, good for him, good for the organization, and they did well. They did good by their player, and we get another, a good stretch of Brock Besser here.
Especially with what Ehlers ended up signing for a little bit more. So that Besser deal obviously looks like gold compared to Ehlers.
Yeah.
Thoughts on the Garland extension?
Yeah, I like it too. The only problem I have with the only problem I have with those two being signed is just there is a little bit of that run it back mentality right now where, is that a good thing? I don't know. We saw what they did last year. I do think that there's more in the tank from what they had last year. I think last year was a bit of an anomaly, so we'll see. He got a pretty good deal, so he is a heart and soul kind of guy. Just plays every situation you need him to. So I do like Garland. We'll just see. It's really going to be what they can do with the rest of the offseason. So I don't mind them bringing him back. We'll see what happens going forward.
Yeah. Definitely moving back on the Besser thing. Yeah, I completely agree. I was absolutely shocked. Actually, believe it or not, earlier that morning, I did kind of like a goodbye Besser video that I published prior to him signing. And then when he signed, I was like, I feel like a bit of an ass now, putting out that video. And I promoted it, goodbye Besser. And then that happening, I was just like, thank you for making me look like a fool. I'm like, should I take it down? Should I not? I was like, nah, I'll keep it up. Why not?
I bet you even the Canucks social media was pretty close to posting a thank you, Brock. So I think it took everyone by shock, to be honest. And hearing the stories of how it happened in the morning, sounds like to everyone it was a shock, to be honest. Not even he thought he was going to be signing with Vancouver on June 31st or June 30th, right? So.
Yeah, I saw that interview with Besser after and him just talking about it. It seemed like to me he's, a lot of people said, he was basically on his way out. He had almost 2 feet out the door, maybe a pinky toe was still within the door. But even he said, I thought I was done, but it seemed like he really wanted to stay. And then sounds like he was waiting on the Canucks to go down to his asking price, or at least, jump at him. Obviously, we know about Christian Dvorak and them for some reason wanting him. Yeah, I saw that and I was like, what?
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that they did not go down that route and chose Besser over Dvorak. But yeah, it was just very surprising, to see that. And then obviously, I was actually in the middle of doing videos when that news broke. Yeah. And I was like, oh, great. I got to quickly, make a thumbnail and quickly put out a video. But, it was still surprising. And obviously, him signing for 7 years possibly means he's spending his whole career with the Vancouver Canucks.
I mean, at the
So
end of
yeah.
this, he could be a top all time of a couple goals, points, right? Like he could be up there, so he can go down as one of the best Canucks to play, right? So,
hmm what's your predictions for the opening night lineup for the Canucks?
um, I do predict one more move coming in. I think Linus Karlsson draws into the opening lineup. I think Atu Ratu definitely draws into the opening lineup. I do think Willander starts in game one. I don't know if he finishes in game 82, but I think he starts in game one. And yeah, I think that's about it. It's like I said, I do think there's one, if not two more moves coming, but definitely one more. So it's a little bit tough. But right now, well, I guess we'll restart because at this point they haven't made the move. So I guess we just assume that the move hasn't come. I think Carlson slides in for sure. Archdeep Baines potentially does, and Aturatu gets in as well. So
Um, Crap, I think I just lost my question I was going to ask. Wow. Let's see if I can quickly remember it.
yeah, come back to it if you do.
Yeah, I might have to come back to it.
You'll wake up at 2 a.m. and you'll remember it.
Yeah, that's usually what happens.
Yeah.
Let's. Crap, I'm trying to remember it. Come on, this is making me look bad on camera.
No, don't worry about it.
Thoughts? Well, I'll throw like a bit of a curveball, a little bit of a baseball reference. Quads will probably like that. Thoughts on this current season going on? Like, who do you think's gonna? I know you don't watch much Blue Jays, but who do you think's gonna finish first in the AL East this year?
I'll go, just for fun. I think Yankees.
No.
Judge. It's hard to go against Judge, right? He's just such a beast.
Yeah.
He's such a beast.
Yeah. All right. Well, what about the NL? Since we just did the AL.
Let's see. You know what? I'm actually just gonna go. Let's go NL. The Brewers. The Brewers are. Dodgers are always the Dodgers. They've been kind of slumping a little bit. I don't want to just do a cop out and say the Dodgers. I'm gonna go Brewers just to be a little different. Dodgers, you can never count them out, but I don't know. They've been slumping a little bit, so I'm gonna go Brewers.
Yeah. I mean, the Brewers just swept them, so
yeah.
I think I just remembered what the question was. Are there any Canuck games on the schedule that you're looking forward to?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I haven't even done a deep dive. I'm in the middle of doing my prospect rankings, and that takes up quite a bit of my time. I haven't even really looked at the schedule. I know that the schedule dropped, and I have taken a look at it, but I haven't really done a big glance. I saw their video that they posted of the NHL 26, or I don't know. I guess that's 25 or whatever it was. And there's always the classic Toronto and all that stuff, but I haven't really looked into it that deep. Like I said, I've been head first into these prospect rankings, so
That's fair. I do know they have the game against the Rangers on the 28th. JT Miller being back in town. Do you think he might get booed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think he'll get booed. I don't think he should, but I do think he'll get booed.
Yeah, that's
definitely sorry, go ahead.
That's definitely one game I have circled on my calendar. I want to try and go to that game because I'm obviously, being a JT Miller fan, there's a few content creators that are big JT Miller fans. I think we all kind of are trying to get together and go to this game and start a JT Miller jam.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can get that done.
I mean, like I said, yeah, he shouldn't really be booed. Yeah, it was a bad start or a bad way to end, the whole relationship. But I mean, he did bring a lot of good moments into this franchise, and so, I do think he's just a guy that wears his heart on his sleeve, and I don't know. I just don't think the boo is going to be the right thing to do, but I think he's going to get booed no matter what. So,
Yeah, definitely. On that note, what was your thoughts on the whole riff thing and that whole, we'll say, debacle again on just that whole thing, and how that was handled by management? I've spoken a lot about how management handled that situation and how bad it was.
yeah.
what was your like reaction to that whole thing? And
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way to describe it is ridiculous, right? Like from top to bottom, I just don't. It's just you hear guys talk about it from other teams, and it's it's just such a it's a bit it's bush league, right? There's no way other to put it than bush league. It's just at no point should you have this going on as a professional organization where you have an outspoken rift between your two top players after just re-signing. It's just the only issue I have with it about talking about it is, at the end of the day, it's all speculation. We don't know exactly what happened, but at the same time, there was just a lot I do think the way that it was handled was quite poor, and at the end of the day, I don't know. I don't know how you let it get to that point, or how you re-sign people knowing that that's going on, and you still just try to push through it and just hope that it could all be worked out in the end. Where, it obviously couldn't, and that cost you a lot because then you had to basically give them up. Obviously not for pennies because we got Victor Mancini and we got some assets for it, but it just I don't know. It just the way that it was handled top to bottom, it was just weird. That's the only way to put it. It's bush league and it was weird.
Absolutely. Last question. Do you believe Elias Pettersson will bounce back this season?
Yeah, I do. I'm of the belief that you don't just take, the Space Jam isn't a thing, right? Like you don't just take someone's skill. I think that he is probably, this is me just on my personal opinion. I do think he's probably a pretty emotional player that's pretty confidence based. And, I can see that, when I play hockey, even in beer league, right? Like if I'm not feeling confident in my game, it's not a good time. And I just think that, times that by 1 million or 11.6 million, and you have Elias Pettersson, right? And I just think he's a little bit emotional. He really cares what's going on outside. And so I just think when he's in a slump, he's in a slump. And it's really hard to break him out. But we've seen it time and time again. When he does get hot, he goes through these incredible stretches where he's back to his form. And so I think now with a fresh start, 1 year now that he doesn't have, he's not coming off that new contract, which is just eating him alive. I think he can come back, reset, and I do think he will bounce back, right? Like, do we see 100 point EP this year? I don't know, but I don't think, for all these people that, say that he's a third line center and, this is the worst contract in the NHL, I'm pumping my brakes on all that. I just don't think, we've seen enough to think that he can bounce back. Yes, he does need to bounce back, and yes, he does need to figure a lot of stuff out. He is an $11.6 million player. I'm not excusing the fact that he does need to bounce back and figure some stuff out. But at the same time, I just, I'm not going to sit here and say that he's completely washed and, he's never coming back, because there is a good player along somewhere in there. I just think he needs to get it back.
Yeah, absolutely. And then hearing all this positivity about, his training and, going out of his way to meet up with Adam Foote. We've been hearing nothing but positive this offseason, which obviously gives me hope. I'm obviously think he'll bounce back. I was never, stuck between PD or Miller with that whole thing. I've always believed in PD. Mm-hmm. Yes, I've criticized him for his play, which
is fine.
Everyone does it. But at the same time, it's like what you said. This isn't Space Jam. That was a great reference, by the way. I love that. This isn't Space Jam. You don't just get your talent sucked out with, I guess in this case, it would be a hockey puck.
Yeah.
And he definitely will bounce back. I feel maybe he won't get to the 100-point plateau, but he could at least. I'd be satisfied with 80. Is that something you'd be satisfied with? Yeah,
exactly. This year too, and that's just for next year. I do think that there's still a 100-point player in there, right? I just really think he just needs a reset. I just from everything, the way that the vibe that I get, like I already said, I just think he's a pretty confident, driven player. And when things are going bad, they just kind of pile up in his head and he starts squeezing the stick and he starts realizing that everyone's watching him. He's got a lot of pressure on him, right? And again, that's not excusing him. He signed an $11.6 million a year contract. So there is pressure on him and he does need to fulfill that side of the bargain. But at the same time, I just think that all kind of weighs on him. So I just think a little bit of a reset. Hopefully they can get some players around him. Like obviously the other side of the coin is that, the team doesn't really have a lot of superstars per se to play with him. So, maybe that's just a simple fact of why he's not getting to 100 points anytime soon. But at the same time, I do think it will get there. But I'm happy with 80 next year for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously bringing in a guy like Evander Kane could maybe help protect him a little bit.
Yeah, hopefully.
I know that's probably not why they brought in Kane. They just brought him in for that physical role, having lost that with obviously Joshua. And then I do feel as though Kane was maybe their answer to Brock Besser, and then they probably weren't expecting Brock.
Yeah.
So that
was the only reason why I didn't like the Evander Kane signing. I don't actually mind the Evander Kane signing. I don't like it if that was the answer to Brock Besser. That's what I was nervous about, because I don't think that's legit. And so now that they brought back Brock Besser, I'm okay with them having Evander Kane. I think now he's just their Dakota Joshua replacement.
Absolutely. It kind of feels like it was like a premonition. That's why they brought in Kane, because they knew they were getting rid of Joshua. But obviously, Kane being a hometown guy, I watched him a lot when he played for the Giants. I had season tickets back in the day before they moved to Langley, which still crushes me to this day that they moved all the way out to Langley. Because that was some good hockey in the WHL.
Yeah.
Obviously seeing guys like Bo Byram playing for them. I can't remember off the top of my head some of the older players. Gallagher, yeah. I was a big fan of his. Not so much
Lucic.
Nowadays. Lucic. I forget a goalie they had as well. Who? It was I think Sexsmith. I believe they had him. At some point. So that was great seeing those guys. And just on that note, I guess I'll do like a bonus question. With PWHL coming into Vancouver, I actually just got season tickets for that.
Nice.
So I'm very interested and excited for that. Obviously, hockey at the Coliseum is great. Having seen the Giants play there. What are your thoughts on the PWHL coming to Vancouver?
I think it's fantastic. I think it's going to thrive. Like I don't think you can really find a better city to expand to be quite honest. Like I think Vancouver is just, it's a progressive city. I think enough people are brokenhearted by the Canucks and the way that they run things and consistently up their ticket prices, and I think it's going to do great. I think it's going to be one of the better markets in the entire league. I think it's a fantastic idea. I mean they've already hooked you in, right? So I think it's great. And like you said, the Coliseum, it's so nice to have. I mean, obviously I'm an Islander, so the Coliseum doesn't hold, it's not close to my heart like it is a lot of the Vancouver Canucks fans, but I have been to games there, and I do understand the significance of the Coliseum. So it's great that there's hockey being played there again.
Absolutely. And then, I guess, do I have one more question? No, I don't. Well, thank you very much for your time. I know you're busy doing your rankings. I really appreciate it. For those of you that don't know you too well, where can we find you on social media or anywhere?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. Hall. Oh, I think I actually let's see what it is now. I switched it up not too long ago. So I'm at Dave Hall 1289. So there you go, at Dave Hall 1289. I used to be just Hall, but I decided anyways, whatever. I switched it up. And you can obviously find me at CanucksArmy.com. So do a lot of my all my prospect stuff. I'll be getting back into the Blackfish pretty quick here in August, redoing that where I kind of recap every single prospect from every single week. I kind of just go into a little deep dive of what they did that week. So that's starting up pretty quick here. And then it's we also got the World Junior Summer Showcase coming up later this week, so I'll have some stuff on that as well. Braden Coots will be there, same with Wilson Bork. So yeah, some exciting prospect stuff going on.
Awesome. Other than your prospects, what does the rest of your summer look like?
A lot of baseball right now. My oldest he plays on a summer team, so there's just a lot of baseball happening until about mid-August. So just trying to get through that. Really, that's a bit of a grind. But I was thinking of maybe going to taking the kids to Drumheller this summer. So gonna maybe take a little bit of a road trip up there in mid August. Barring, we'll see what the fire situation looks like, and the weather. But that's one thing I might do. But other than that, sticking back, just getting ready for this the season. I got 2 young kids, so there's not too much exciting stuff going on.
Awesome. Well, once again, thank you for taking the time join the podcast. I really enjoyed this. This was awesome, great insight, and hopefully we can get you back on the show again during the season. Absolutely. Or at least next off season.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thanks for having me, buddy.
All right, thanks for tuning in.